Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring something super interesting, the connection between mindfulness and ADHD.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating area of research. There's been some really cool developments lately in figuring out how to make mindfulness practices work better for people with ADHD.
And we've got some great sources to dig into: a research article out of Ritsumeikan University, a summary from ScienceDaily that breaks down their findings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And to get a more complete picture, we'll also be looking at some related studies from the universities of Southampton and Cambridge.
Excellent. So, are we ready to dive in?
Let's do it. So when we talk about ADHD, I think it's important to start with just how common it is.
Absolutely.
It affects something like 7 to 10% of children. That's like, what, 1 or 2 kids in every single classroom?
Yeah, it's a significant portion of the population for sure. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not just about kids, and it's not just about, hyperactivity.
Right. It's not just about kids who fidget. Right.
Exactly. ADHD can have a much, much broader impact than people realize. It can affect people of all ages. It can impact school, work, relationships, even mental health.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. We're talking potential struggles with anxiety, depression, academic performance, low self-confidence. It really is a multifaceted condition.
That's a really good point. It's multifaceted.
Yeah.
So with something so complex, how do we even begin to address it?
Right.
And that's where mindfulness comes in, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Now, I think a lot of people, when they hear mindfulness, they think like relaxation, stress reduction.
Yeah, for sure.
Which it can be, definitely. But it's so much more than that.
Absolutely. It's really a holistic practice. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment, on purpose, and without judgment. It's about being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, your physical sensations. And there's a growing body of research showing that it can be really helpful for managing ADHD symptoms.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that by being more present, more aware, it can help with some of those challenges that come with ADHD.
Exactly.
And this is where it gets really fascinating to me. Those traditional meditation postures, like sitting cross-legged,
Yeah.
that can be really difficult for some people with ADHD. It's like
Yeah.
this practice that's supposed to help you focus
Right.
can be really hard to even start because of focus challenges.
It's a real dilemma, and it highlights the importance of finding ways to make mindfulness more accessible, regardless of someone's physical ability or their tendencies.
I like that. So it's about meeting people where they're at.
Exactly. And that's where this new research from Ritsumeikan University is really interesting, because they discovered that posture plays a big role in how easy it is for people, especially people with ADHD, to get into mindfulness, particularly a type of meditation called body scan meditation.
Body scan meditation.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is body scan meditation?
Body scan meditation. Okay, so for our listeners who might not be familiar, what exactly is body scan meditation?
So basically you focus your attention on different parts of your body.
Like you bring awareness to your physical sensations, moving your attention, systematically from your toes to the top of your head.
I see. So you're kind of like scanning your body with your mind.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that this study found that how you hold your body during this practice can actually make a difference.
Wait, really? So you're telling me if I'm sitting up straight versus like slumped over, it's going to affect how well I can do this body scan meditation?
That's exactly what they found. They had participants try out body scan meditation in different postures.
Interesting. Like what?
So they had people with, hyperactive impulsive ADHD tendencies, some with inattentive tendencies, and then a control group without ADHD tendencies. And they had them all try meditating while upright, slumped over, leaning back.
Oh, wow. So many different ways to sit.
Right. And even lying down, what we call the supine position.
Clever.
Yeah.
So they really covered all the bases. And what did they find? Was there a connection between like how they were sitting and how easy it was to meditate?
Big time, especially for the people with hyperactive impulsive tendencies. They found that slumping over made it way harder for them to focus during the body scan.
That makes so much sense, though. It's like when you're trying to work at a desk and you just keep like sinking lower and lower in your chair.
Exactly.
It's like you just can't focus on anything when you're all slumped over.
It's all about body awareness. And on the flip side, they found that lying down in that supine position or sitting upright made it much easier for this group.
Wow, so just changing how you're positioned can actually make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. Imagine like telling people who have always struggled with traditional meditation to try lying down instead.
I know.
It could make mindfulness so much more accessible, especially for people with ADHD who, maybe have a hard time sitting still for long periods.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about this research. It's like it opens up a whole new avenue for bringing mindfulness into people's
It's
lives.
like you're removing a barrier.
Exactly. And it's not just about, feeling more comfortable. This information is really valuable for healthcare professionals too. Like when they're designing mindfulness interventions, especially for people with ADHD, they can actually factor in posture as a key element in making those practices more effective.
I love that. So it's like we're finally recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to mindfulness. It has to be tailored to the individual's needs, and sometimes even something as simple as how you're sitting can make a world of difference.
Exactly. And get this, the researchers, they didn't just identify this connection, they actually developed tools to measure the impact of posture on mindfulness.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. They created what they're calling the mindfulness encouraging reactions, scale MERS for short, and the mindfulness discouraging reactions scale, or MDRS.
Catchy.
Yeah, I know, right? But these scales, they can actually help therapists and practitioners, assess someone's experience and tailor mindfulness practices for them.
That's amazing. So it's all about that personalized approach, really understanding the individual and their needs, their challenges, which makes a lot of sense, especially when we're talking about something as complex as ADHD. But of course, mindfulness isn't the only approach to managing ADHD. We also hear a lot about medication.
Right. Medication definitely plays a big role too.
So in your research, have you looked at how medication impacts people with ADHD?
Yeah, definitely. We actually looked at this study from the University of Southampton, and they were looking at the impact of medication on quality of life for people with ADHD.
And what did they find?
Well, their research basically confirmed that for many people, medications can significantly improve their quality of life. Medications can help with those core ADHD symptoms, things like inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, which then, has this ripple effect.
Oh, so it's like if you can manage those core symptoms, then everything else kind of falls into place.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're able to focus better at work or your relationships improve because you're not as impulsive in social situations, those are huge wins.
Absolutely. So that's good news, right?
Yeah.
Medication is helping people with ADHD live fuller lives.
It is. But, and this is important, while medications can be super effective in improving those core symptoms, the overall impact on quality of life isn't always as big as we might hope.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What do you mean?
So imagine someone whose hyperactivity decreases significantly because of medication, right? They're able to sit still, focus at work, get things done. That's huge. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden their underlying anxiety goes away or their challenges with, say, emotional regulation just disappear.
Ah, I see. So it's like we're treating a symptom, but not necessarily addressing the entire experience of living with ADHD.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to understand the full picture, to recognize that ADHD can impact so many different aspects of a person's life. And that includes their emotional well-being, which is often overlooked.
And that leads us to that research out of the University of Cambridge, right? The one that found that emotional problems might actually be a core symptom of ADHD.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big deal, right? Because I think most people, when they think of ADHD, they think of it in purely behavioral terms, like, oh, they fidget, or they have trouble paying attention, or they're impulsive. But to think that emotional dysregulation could be a core symptom, that really changes things, doesn't it?
It really does. And the findings from their research are pretty compelling. They discovered that a whopping 1 in 2 children with ADHD experience emotional dysregulation.
1 in 2. Wow, that's a lot higher than I would have thought.
It is. And this emotional dysregulation can manifest in a lot of different ways: anxiety, depression, even explosive outbursts. We're talking about kids who are really struggling. And what makes this even more complicated is that their research indicated that Ritalin, which is one of the most commonly prescribed medications for ADHD, doesn't fully address this emotional dysregulation.
So even when those more obvious behavioral symptoms improve, these kids are still grappling with these really intense emotions.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case for many, and it highlights just how crucial it is to have interventions that go beyond traditional medication, interventions that focus specifically on teaching emotional regulation skills. We need to give these kids the tools they need to understand and manage their emotions effectively.
It really makes you realize that treating ADHD effectively requires a much more holistic, multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
We can't just focus on one aspect like attention or hyperactivity and assume that's enough.
Absolutely. And that actually leads us to another interesting question.
So for anyone listening who's thinking, wow, ADHD is more complex than I realized, which I definitely am, what's the key takeaway here? Where do we even go from here?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that ADHD is not one size fits all, right? It's multifaceted. Like we've been talking about, some people might really benefit from incorporating mindfulness into their routine, even just experimenting with different postures during meditation.
Right, like lying down instead of sitting cross-legged.
Exactly. For some people, medication is going to be a game changer. And others might need additional support to really get a handle on emotional regulation. It's about figuring out what works for each individual.
It's about recognizing the individual, their needs, their experiences, their challenges. It's not about fitting into a mold.
100%. It's about creating a space where people with ADHD can thrive, with the right support and understanding.
And speaking of support, there's one thing we haven't talked about that might offer another piece of this puzzle: exercise. We hear so much about the benefits of exercise, not just for physical health, but for attention, focus, even emotional well-being.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm wondering, could exercise be another key part of addressing ADHD in a more holistic way, like alongside these other approaches we've talked about, like mindfulness and medication?
That's such a great question, and it really highlights how much more there is to learn and explore. When we start thinking about ADHD more holistically, considering all these different aspects, medication, mindfulness, physical activity, it opens up a world of possibilities.
It really does. And on that note, I think this has been such a fascinating deep dive. We've covered so much ground: the impact of posture on mindfulness, the complexities of medication, that often overlooked aspect of emotional dysregulation. So much good stuff.
It's amazing how much we're learning about ADHD and how to better support people who have it.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on ADHD, maybe spark some ideas for your own journey or for supporting loved ones. Knowledge is power, right?
For sure.
The more we understand about ADHD, the better equipped we are to create a world that embraces neurodiversity in all its forms. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time.